It's the weekly show with David J. Maloney. This week, David talks to conductor William Henry Curry. And now, here's your host, David J. Maloney.
Welcome to everyone at home, and I would normally say our studio audience to the weekly show. I'm your host, David J. Maloney. I say normally, as we'd usually shoot the show, but for a small studio audience at the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino. But we are still in the last few weeks of shooting from home due to coronavirus concerns. In fact, this is just a green screen. Hey, Marty, can you put me in a major concert hall? So, a Southwest pilot has been sentenced to 1 year probation and a $5,000 fine for watching porn and exposing himself to a female crew member in flight. And you thought Delta was ready when you were. And a wallet that was lost 46 years ago at a Ventura, California movie theater was recently found and returned to its owner. The fact that this was found 46 years later is amazing. As we all know, theaters typically clean their floors every 50 years. A shortage of truck drivers is driving up the price of groceries. On a positive note, it's also driving down the price of truck stop hookers. Oh, and it's been rumored that Bill Cosby is planning a return to stand-up comedy shows. Yeah, his opening act will be Marilyn Manson. Let me guess, 2-drink minimum at those shows? A 21-year-old British woman said she became an ISIS bride because she was lonely and wanted someone to love her. She also felt there was something creepy about eHarmony. Lastly, Lytton, British Columbia just broke the record for the highest temperature recorded in Canada ever at 116 degrees Fahrenheit. That sounds hot, but it's only 47 degrees Celsius. Tonight's guest is one of the most distinguished conductors working today. He's led over 40 orchestras across the nation, from the Los Angeles Philharmonic to the New York City Opera. His story is unique as a black man achieving fame and recognition within classical music. His composition, Eulogy for a Dream, is a tribute to the great Martin Luther King and has shown the world that this maestro really has it all. We will have conductor William Henry Curry on the show with us tonight, so don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back. Our featured guest tonight is one of the most accomplished and respected conductors working today. But what makes him so unique is his story of perseverance in the face of incredible odds, and his sheer love for the art and the craft and the power of music. He's the first ever unanimous winner of the Leopold, Stokowski conducting competition.
Exactly.
And you're the composer of Eulogy for a Dream. Please welcome to the show conductor, composer, and leader of the Durham Symphonic Orchestra, Maestro William Henry Curry. William, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
So your career has been exemplary, and it's even more remarkable because of the road you've traveled to get here. You're an accomplished and loved maestro at the Durham Symphony Orchestra, appreciated for your work in its own right. But it goes much deeper than that. You came from a black lower middle class family in Pittsburgh, and now you're one of the most, well, you're one of the only active black maestros in the South, right? So I
am the only music director or principal conductor of a symphony orchestra in the history of the South.
So let's talk about that journey. I mean, what was your family life like growing up?
Well, in fact, a lot of people are doing some research in my family right now. I'm putting together my memoirs. I'm thinking of calling it Score Settling Time, in order to tell the truth about certain things I've had to suppress in this bizarre life of being a black person, a black conductor, when there were no black conductors in America. Though few there were, had to make work in Europe. But my parents, like you say, they were lower middle class. There was no music in my home. We couldn't afford a TV until I was 5 or 6. There was no phonograph player. The musical talent, if there be any, skipped a generation. my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, was an opera singer in a black opera company. Now, we've heard about black baseball teams, but less well-researched are black opera companies, and there certainly was one in Pittsburgh. So all of this musical talent that was suppressed, me and my brother, we figure out we have played in every major concert hall in the world between us. He's the cellist. He's been in the Cleveland Orchestra for 41 years.
So how did your grandfather come to love opera music? Was it from his parents, or did it kind of skip a generation like you thought before?
It's a mystery as to how he discovered his voice, operatic music. But mind you, every home in America after 1820, that is from lower middle class on up, had a piano in the home. We can't even imagine a day before TV. We can't imagine a day before radio. Radio was invented in 1920 or became more national in 1920. That's already 7 years before my father was born. But everyone had a piano, and the baby sister played it, and there were always books of simplified classical selections. So everyone heard classical music. And so I think that he heard something that he liked. And of course, these ancient records, I mean, probably before 78 RPM, he heard them. So I'd like to know the answer to that question. But he fell in love with it and was an opera singer. I don't even have a picture of him.
Now, not only that, though, but your grandmother received a scholarship as an organ major for the New England Conservatory in 1915. So I'm thinking, even in those post-Civil War years, that just seems like utterly remarkable to me. I mean, how was this family history taught to you growing up?
Well, the New England Conservatory was the only music school in America that accepted Black people. And right now, a very, very well-known African-American female composer is Florence Price. She died in 54, I think. But she went to the New England Conservatory, but her mother told her, since she had very light skin, you have to try to pass as Native American or Italian. So I assume by 1915, there wasn't any problem with accepting other Blacks.
So was it that early introduction to classical music and opera through family that kind of started your journey into conducting? I mean, is that how your love for music emerged?
I always wanted to play the piano. Whenever we would go to a neighbor's house, my parents' friends, I would get to the piano. They couldn't get me away from the piano. I'm sure I just was like, chaotic banging. But my parents could not afford a piano or piano lessons. I'm sure it broke their hearts. There was only money for essentials. So finally, in this all-Black elementary school, a Jewish gentleman, Eugene Reichenfeld, noticed that this school was underserved over in this area. And so he donated his instruments, his own string instruments, and his lessons for free to me and some other children there, including my brother. So he noticed I absorbed, I inhaled music. I think of my 7th grade where I discovered Broadway and opera and symphony, pardon me. And it was, I accepted all if it was wonderful, jazz, Motown. So he saw I was inhaling music. So he would loan me conductor scores, the things the conductor reads, and opera recordings, Puccini Tosca. And one day after a viola lesson, I was mainly a violist, he said, I think you'd make a good conductor. I was stunned because I was the most shy, introverted kid in the history of conducting. But he sensed something in me. I said, but I don't know how to conduct. He said, that's okay. I'll put you in front of my orchestra next Thursday, and you'll teach yourself.
Throw you in the deep water.
You have to have what Nietzsche said, title of one of his books, The Will to Power. I mean, look, this is one of the most crazy professions in the history of the world. This is what I don't talk, really. This is what I do for a living. And so you're controlling 100 people in the orchestra, maybe 300 people in the chorus. So you've got to like doing that. But you can't be, let's see if I can find a nice word for it. You cannot be a pain in the neck.
Mm-hmm.
It can't just be an ego thing. It just can't be a bully pulpit. You have to be so infused with the spirit, the love of music, that all your ego is transcended and we all get on board because we all love music and let's work together.
So, Bill, we need to go to commercial real quick, pay some bills. Can you stick around till after the break?
Certainly.
from a conductor's perspective, what is actually the hardest part of conducting Beethoven's Ninth?
Well, the difficult part sometimes in a piece of music is this. If you were to do any of the Mozart symphonies, I mean, it's very, very easy, technically. Spiritually, a Mozart symphony has this depth that is elusive. Mm-hmm. Beethoven's Ninth is a little tricky, but it's not the most difficult. Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring. You know, I always have nightmares about that piece. But Beethoven's Ninth, yes, it's tricky because there are certain spots in that piece where if you mess up, the train goes off the tracks. Sometimes, you know, you can just flail away and they'll take care of it. But there are certain transitions that if you're not spot on, then it's noticeable that there's been a heck of an accident. So technically, a medium difficulty. And the spiritual message, I mean, I had known Beethoven's Ninth, but I'd never studied it carefully because I wasn't supposed to be conducting that night. But I had been in the viola section at the rehearsals. So I had a great advantage in that I knew what the orchestra was used to hearing as far as the tempi and the deviations from the tempo. So it could have been a lot more difficult if I had not been at the rehearsals, because I knew this is what they're used to. And as the performance went on, I knew I could do what I wanted to do because we were in sync with each other.
So what is your favorite part of that masterpiece on a personal level?
So in this Ninth Symphony, for the finale, for the first time in the history of music, in a symphony, he adds not only 4 vocal soloists, but a huge chorus. Now, to us, that doesn't sound as, I mean, he was considered to be crazy, literally. In fact, you can't find one person that was a contemporary Beethoven that thought the idea of using this choral finale was anything but the work of a lunatic. But it is sacred music because it really is all about all men are brothers. That's from a poem by Schiller, a popular poet at the time. So he gives himself quite a challenge to do something that's never been done before and to put in a symphony an extra musical message, in this case, about the brotherhood of man. And to contemporary ears, it's considered to be one of the most priceless pieces ever written. So this finale that sums up his entire life, people, and yet he was so alone.
You've said that no one loves music more than you. What does that mean to you? And what is the power of classical music to you?
Lord have mercy. Nobody could possibly love Louis Armstrong more than me. I can't imagine such a beast. Mozart and Louis Armstrong, the 2 apostles of musical joy. To me, the best of classical music is cosmic. All these words are too pretentious. Enlightening, ennobling, edifying, all pretentious. They go from A to Z. They go into the deepest part of my soul, the sadness, the joy, the hope, the yearning. And as much as I worship Louis Armstrong, it's not as infinite in its appeal as Beethoven and Bach and Mozart at their very best.
Is there a song or a piece that gives you the most joy to either A, conduct yourself, or B, sit and watch an orchestra as an observer be performed?
Yes, there are certain pieces that I love to conduct. When I think of what things they share in common, these 6 pieces, one of them is they're not that difficult to conduct. Mm-hmm. It's on your favorite old comfortable sweater. You know you're going to feel comfortable. And for me, I am, as you can see by, I'm an emotional person. That's why I'm a conductor, because I feel free to be uninhibited of whatever I'm feeling. And the orchestra feels that. The audience feels that. So the music that most captivates me when I'm conducting it, and I feel that when I'm conducting Tchaikovsky or Rachmaninoff or Prokofiev, mention three of the Russians, I feel like I'm conducting my life story. This is like my musical autobiography. They are my soulmates. We are together in that. And so that is delicious fun, of course, to conduct. And when I conduct my own music, I've composed about a dozen pieces. And people in the orchestra tell me that my face looks different when I'm conducting my own music. Because as you can imagine, these things, these sounds have been trapped in your brain for 2 months. And all of a sudden, you're in a big room with a 100-piece orchestra, and the sound is overwhelming and so personal.
So on top of all your other successes, and you were talking about, things that you've composed, you've got this wonderful piece of music, the Eulogy of a Dream, inspired by the writings of MLK, which seems kind of like such a perfect union of material and artist. Tell me about the process of writing that work. How did that start?
I realized I wanted to create a legacy that showed I had been here on Earth, something positive for other people. And at the same time, I started to read for the first time since childhood the speeches of Martin Luther King. And it was just amazing how these sentiments healed me. And so the ones that were particularly meaningful to me, I used in this orchestral piece, Eulogy for a Dream, for speaker and orchestra.
So you're moving forward. I know that you're passionate about getting music into schools and making music accessible to everyone. Why is that specifically important to you?
Because of the way it transformed my life. I mean, like I say, lower middle class black kids, all black neighborhood, everything, black, no classical music. My brother will tell you it was his salvation also. When we played in an orchestra, we found our tribe, our peeps, where we finally fit in.
So what are you up to these days, and where can our audience go to follow along with you?
Well, thank you for asking that. I've been the music director of the Durham Symphony for 12 years. One of my missions has been to do on every last program at least one piece by an American composer. Now, you would think that would be done more often. We're the only orchestra in the history of America to do that for more than 3 years.
So, Bill, tell us a little bit about your blog.
Since the Durham Symphony, like every other symphony orchestra in the world, was on hiatus for a whole year, I had to justify my existence, as it were. And I wanted to keep the orchestra, the idea of the orchestra, still in the mind of our community. So I did, every Monday, I published a new blog.
And where can people find the blog?
The Durham Symphony Orchestra, if you just type that in, Durham Symphony Orchestra, there's a thing called Monday Musicals with the Maestro. Isn't that pretentious?
Bill, thank you so much for being on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, Maestro William Henry Curry.
Thank you for inviting me. It was a real pleasure. Thank you for letting me go on and on and on about my favorite subject, myself.
That is our show for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. A very special thanks to conductor William Henry Curry for joining us. Stay safe, everyone.